It's New Year's Eve. It's been raining for 3 days, and I kind of like that. I'm working on the battery boxes right now. I'm trying to figure out how to mount them, in which orientation. We are mostly interested in getting the weight kind of over the axles or closer to center of the car in interests of better handling. So that gives us this shelf right here at the top of the back, and the hump of the axle is right there in the middle. Problem is that shelf is like 12.1 inches from here to the bottom, but there is a little lip, so if we could go in a little further, but we can't because the depth of the batteries. This is a battery box for 3 batteries. There's no space for a 4th. Ooh, well, we could probably modify a little bit of this hump right here. That's really what it comes down to. And that hump is just there for the fuel tank and all the goodness that the 74 changed. I expect that shelf to be a little different on Ivy, but for this car, 74, 75, we've got to have to remove a little bit of the sound deadening there, perhaps to get an extra couple millimeters. And if we're lucky, it should fit 4 batteries. So I got to make a better box. I've been working with CAD. It's cardboard aided design all day, and it's not an exact science, but I guess it's kind of a rough estimation. Dollar store special today brings you the foam mock-up, because foam is a lot more stable than cardboard. It won't kink or bend easily. And we have ourselves 1 battery here. These cooling ports are the thing that stick out the most, but I think more or less we have that height and width. A single battery box was like I think it starts at maybe $400, and then every time you add a second battery, it's like another $230. So for a 4-pack, it's over $1,100, and that's a lot. And I want to make sure that there's also room here, whatever box we create, for all of the cabling and the bus bars to attach and the wires for these little boards. Why don't we try to simplify here a little bit? This is our battery box. Our battery with the little tab on either side. Battery's sitting at about 11 2/16. I know these are not the lowest common denominator, but we're working at 16ths because it really breaks down easily this way. That gives us, if the 12-inch box, 11 2/16, gives us a remainder of 14/16, which splits evenly to 7/16 for either side. The narrowest you could probably make a battery box is just under 12 inches, 11.96. This is one of those companies that does the custom boxes, but very expensive. But it's cool to check it out, fuel2electric.com. You don't want to build it yourself. Because underneath this plastic cover, I know you're curious, come on. It's all of the soldered ends of the battery with the metal terminal connection. So without these plastic covers, you could be shorting out your batteries. Oops, and that's why you don't bend these too much. I'm gonna just glue that back in place. If you're looking at the battery from the very side, like this, it has an aluminum casing which protrudes out and wraps around, and these are the mounting tabs. There is a plastic cover on the tops, which sits like this. The plastic cover doesn't protrude nearly as much as these tabs, but we want to find out just how much space we have to mount this whole thing without squishing the cover or deforming anything, stressing or breaking it. Ideally, I'd also like to buy the EV West battery box, because that would be really nice if they have a 3 and 4-pack available for us. We'll just probably purchase one of their Volkswagen sets. Wouldn't that be cool? Maybe, just maybe, 4 batteries might fit in the trunk. Let's find out. It's a bit of a jigsaw, and it's just not reliable. Unless I start cutting into this panel, I don't really want to have to do that. But it might be the only way we can mount 4 back here. Nice, keep the weight right over the axle. See how convenient these are? What do we think, fellas? Are these mass airflow sensors still good? I'm shopping for conduit here because I want to protect the wire on the underside of the car. It looks like a 1/2 inch is going to be too small because you can't fit a 2-gauge wire in a 1/2 inch pipe. Yeah, we need a 3/4 inch pipe. So there are a couple options, you know. This is a very popular size for things, and it's pretty rigid, but it's not metallic, and that's good, and it'll last up to whatever, 90 degrees centigrade. It'd be cool to have that and kind of bend it around, but I Also think it would be cool to have this, and that would make some of the curves under the car a little bit better. So I'll take a second look under the car and see how many curves and shapes we have, and then I can decide on rigid pipe or bendy pipe, which is a little more expensive. 25 feet, 43 bucks. This will be about $24 for the same length. Since one of my weak points is being a fabricator, I'm not, and having welding tools, which I don't, or the ability to weld, if I can just get myself into a welder's place. All of those complications meant that I'm trying to simplify battery boxes that I want to pay an arm and a leg on the project budget to have a battery box. So I emailed the good folks at EV West and I asked them to, if they're willing to sell some of their Volkswagen boxes, send me the dimensions, which they were so kind to do. I remember EV West uses these pads, like these paper pads between the batteries. But other than that, they stay very secure in here. This is not the right size piece for the top, but you can see how, with the clearances on the edges there, big kill switch does get fit into the side of the battery box. So whatever is convenient, wherever it's convenient, we're gonna probably end up mounting this like that. So you gotta have that extra clearance here for this goodness. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Only really one side of the batteries needs clearance because the molds that I've made, or templates, do take into account the cooling ports on the other end. So we've actually got, boy, about 5 inches of space there. Nice. So a lot of cabling is going to get put in here, all the BMS, the thermistors, or whatever else that is going to be direct to the batteries. Now, I went out and treated myself to a new tape measure. They're all loose here because the final 1/8 of an inch, I think it's 1/8, is cut off at the end, and it's meant to, at full extension like this, give you a true 0. So I was often wondering that. These are actually the right dimensions of EV West. 32 1/4 inch wide, 12 and 0.375 is 3/8 of an inch. So it's 12 3/8 by 32 1/4. The width, 9.8. The closest measurement to 0.8 is 13/16, and it's like 1/10 of an inch off of the 0.8. So it's actually very close. Add 3 inches to that 9.8 for the 4th battery. But the 3-pack can fit nicely in the front here because it's got the space, but it will have to probably be tilted at an angle because I want to give a little bit of clearance to the motor down there, as well as the controller, wherever that controller is going to end up being. Or if this can stay flat and be kind of clear with the motor and all the wiring that's going to go, the 3-phase leads to the top of our Hyper 9, then we're probably going to have the controller at the top here. We're going around the battery box because that can make it very pretty. Okay. The other thing to consider is what color for the battery box. Do we keep it aluminum, raw? Do we paint it black? Do we have, satin or gloss? Or do we match it with the blue of the engine bay? So it could be a lot of fun to do that and then get creative with it later. We'll worry about that in due time. Right now, function before form. Once again, just double checking, it won't fit. It gets real close, but it just won't clear the back. Boxes are loaded up for all my batteries, and now it's time to take them home. I'm so proud that I managed to get this in. I've got 4 hours of air chiseling, or air hammering that I put into it. And look at that, that box fits, baby. Woo! This is a huge item off my list because it was one of the larger stressors of like, great, how much am I going to have to cut into this trunk? It's not beautiful, it's not ugly, but it sure ain't pretty. Okay, I'm gonna put the lid on and see what our clearance is like. There's a little bit of flex in the panel above. Actually, I could demonstrate it here. Okay, you see right there's our aluminum box. That's the inside of it and the outside here. And it's coming up all the way against this lip. I can't get the air hammer to do anything on this because it's too flimsy. So I'm going to put the lid on it, see if I can get that extra few millimeters to squeeze. And in order to make that lid even tighter, I'd have to chamfer these holes, because right now they're just flat drilled, and then I can get some like flush hardware. But if you look here, we have good clearance there. I did air hammer the top of the inside. I was actually a little nervous, maybe it would break the windshield, but it didn't. The rear windscreen. And so we got good clearance there. Let's see if I can demonstrate. With a little bit of wiggle room, that's good. We want wiggle room because that lid is thick. It's gotta be like 2-3 millimeters thick. An entire seam. Actually, what you're looking at here is where the rear of another car was stitched in. You remember earlier we were talking about how this car is pieced together from another car because the whole rear end was replaced. And there are seams up here in the corners where they welded it in. There's like 2 layers of window frame on the bottom and everything. So a lot of that work was done very nicely, but it's also very robust work. So I had to kind of break through a few of the welds. I'm gonna seal it up nicely to keep moisture and rust out of it. It didn't do much. It's just like a little bit of flattening along the top there. So with this battery box all the way in and the batteries installed, I'll build some brackets on the sides, and then I will have a front covering here. So it'll be like a nice fascia. I've got some black ABS textured plastic. We can upholster it if we wish, but we'll make sure that it's very nice. We're gonna have, I think, a dark gray carpet in here, or black to match the original. The carpet of this trunk, here's one of those panels, black. Okay, that's it for today. It's big item off the list. I'm chamfering the top holes on this plate here, getting some nice round edges in there, making the screws flush so that we can have some good clearance. Look how nicely the box is nestled in. Oh yeah. Got enough room there for the headrests to clear the back. It clears mostly here so we can have a flat fascia as we build a trunk interior design, whatever it's going to be. Looks like carpet might just get glued to the top here. We'll see what the upholstery shop guys think about that. It's going to be about 150 pounds, 170 maybe with everything, of batteries and wiring inside. Should be fun to lift it. The next step in figuring out what kind of bus bars to buy. The bus bars are the ones that will connect from one battery to the other. The other option, if you don't want to spend 55 bucks, is get some like really thick copper plate and cut it, bend it. I'll put a photo here if I can find one quickly, and then have that attached to the crimped ends of those heavy duty cables, and then just do the cable bends. The bus bars are a cleaner install, so anything that helps make this journey a little quicker. Now, there are 2 options. It goes like positive and goes up toward the other negative, or you can have the negative and it goes to the positive. So we gotta like figure out which orientation we need. Here's the module pressed into the side of this plastic that's, I don't know, 3/8 inch thick or something like that. And it looks like I don't have to trim any of the outer brackets because it fits quite nicely. These holes here, are they for battery cables? Are they for cooling ports? Possibly both. I know we're not using cooling ports, but let's find out. One of the frustrating things about this build is that I literally have a question every step of the way, and I have to keep telling myself, don't be the guy that emails way too much. I know they said they're here to help you with questions, but it's like some of these answers could be found on their own. For example, a wiring diagram said 2 conductor 14, and that was listed over a wire. And so I thought, does that mean 2 wires in 1 sheath? Like, we know what a 2 conductor wire is, but then does 14 indicate the gauge? The answer is yes. It seemed like an obvious answer, but I still had to confirm because the last thing I want to do is put a smaller gauge wire on an electrical component that needs higher amperage and a bigger wire. So I had to confirm that because I wasn't sure if a 14 would fit right where the heaters go. So we figured that part out. And so the next part now is, this diagram is cool, but it's like a 2 enclosure series wiring. I got to figure out if we're doing series or parallel. This is basic questions. It's in my notes somewhere. But then I'm like, how does this fit? Because there are cutouts made in it, which is cool. There's the 3 and then there's the 4. We're not using the 4 on the back box. It's just 3 modules. I'm like, do I orient this another way? Is this correct? Are these holes? I mean, everything's pretty precise looking, except like it doesn't line up back here because it sticks out on the cooling port, yet this side doesn't. So it's uneven. What does that mean? How does it go? Is there a picture I can reference somewhere online? I have to answer these questions for myself, and by putting it here in the video, it's practically the most detailed step-by-step I think I've found. And that's why it's taking hours and hours of viewing time and hours more to create. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Learning Curve. So today I'm figuring out how these are really kind of a tight fit in here. But there's a little bit of wiggle room. I got these nice hand clamps on the bottom, which help to lift the load because we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 220 pounds of batteries in here. So those clamps are helping me lift the back so it kind of levels out. It helps me wiggle these just a little bit more. So as you saw in the time lapse, I was putting these in very heavy, hard on the back. Warm yourself up. I don't know, you can't really lift with the legs on this thing. So you've got to lower them in. Getting that box up over the hump should be fun, but I think the front one is where I'm gonna need a hoist. Thankfully, this is the heaviest box with 4 batteries. But the thing I'm getting at right now is this is not fitting very nicely. This is supposed to take the guides for these batteries, and you see that there's a little bit of bend and flex in this plastic, and it has such a tight, flush fit with the top lid that we wanna make sure everything is completely in its channel. The problem is I'm gonna have to take these out again later to get the wiring attached to them, but you see how tight it is here on the sides? You really want to insulate the batteries from the wall of the box. It's aluminum, it won't conduct, but just in case, get like a fiber board or something. So I know EV West has used those, and I'm gonna see if I can find some online. So what I have to do to kind of get these to be able to pry, because you don't have access to any of those with this in place to really pry it. So I'm gonna put a hole saw hole here, here, and here. I'll line up one, and then it'll kind of give me the ability to put a tool in there and wiggle them until I can line them up. It's just a plastic tool, and that way I'll be prying against these. Don't need a huge hole saw. We'll start with maybe a 1/2 inch and see how that works. There it is. First one's lined up. Second one, a little bit of prying. Third one, a little more. And number 4, quite a bit of prying. It's also a little bit delicate. You can see here it kind of got deformed from one of the batteries going in at an angle and then sliding in. So you want to take a little care with that, because this deformation will also pry and push against the others. So that's that. And the inside of the battery box needs to be really clean because we have super tight tolerances designed by EV West. Now we know. Check it out. I got the box further in, but we want to reduce any chance of it going in or out or left to right. So I've got brackets, and it's a shame to put some holes into the side of this aluminum. I don't have an aluminum welder, but I will be using aluminum rivets to attach my brackets, and should be nice and snug, like a bug in a rug. Before, the line was here, this red line. Okay, previously we had our red line there, but by doing a little more air hammering and a little more grinding, I was able to get it to go back in even further. And that gives us access here to this port, which was used for some of the wiring for the fuel sender unit to the gas tank, but now we can make some use of it with something else, and we'll have a cleaner, more spacious trunk. Plus, I've got more room for my brackets here. So all in all, I feel really good about the last bit of effort that I just made to get this thing all the way in. It's gonna be even more secure now. Yes. Is this video getting into too much detail? Because right now I wanna talk also about how this box, it's not even with the cutout on the plastic. So either the plastic's crooked or the box is slightly warped from a lot of the manipulation I've been trying to do to get it to fit, or just heat from welding, because it's a pretty broad piece of aluminum. So it's, custom parts. They are handmade, and they're going to be a little here and there. So EV West said don't use fiberboard unless it's really tight clearances. So if you have room, you don't need to worry about insulating it, but I am gonna stick a piece here because that's where the battery terminal ends will be, on the top part here. So right there. Let's go.
The spice drink martinis.
Scotch, never less than 12 years old.
Is that right? Agency rules?
My rules.
Almost forgot to weigh the box before I put it in the car. 42.6. Getting set up for the wiring has actually taken quite a bit of time because I have to order a lot of different wiring harnesses or spools of wire. So I went through and kind of made a list of what components use what gauge wire, if it's a 2 or 4 conductor, that kind of thing. And purchased a bit of stuff here. We've got split loom.